How should you manage your money as a couple? Should you have separate accounts, joint accounts, one joint and two separate? Let's talk about this so that you can make the right decision for your family. Hey guys, Abby Johnson here with Matterhorn Business Development. If you don't know me, I work with business owners to help increase revenue and increase profits. Part of what I do as a certified profit first professional is getting deep into the financials of how to actually manage the cash flow and money of a business. And through that, I usually end up talking about personal finances with my clients. I'm not a financial advisor, but I can tell you the best way to actually manage the money coming in and out of your accounts. Now, especially working with business owners, the topic comes up from time to time of how to take the money that's being made as profit from the business and bring it home. And how is that going to work with a spouse who is either working or not working? So if you're not a business owner, I am going to run through some scenarios in this video, but I am of course going to put some emphasis on what this means for people who are entrepreneurial or business owners. Okay, so first let's talk about a joint account where both people's pay is going into one account, expenses are being paid from one account, or at least joint accounts. So all money is being put together, all bills are being paid together. So the pros of this, I think, are really about teamwork. So if one person falls down, one person loses their job or gets sick or maybe makes a little bit less money just due to the industry they work in, the other person can pick up the slack. And this can be a give and take. This can go back and forth. That doesn't always mean there's one person is always going to make more money than the other. But to me, this is really teamwork to grow your family, not just having children, but to achieve the goals you want to have as a family. So you both are working together to pay down that debt or buy that new house or get better cars or pay for the other's medical expenses. That's how I feel about joint accounts. I think there really is that teamwork factor there. Now, some cons of having joint accounts is it can lack accountability. So if one person has a problem spending money, like they really overspend and buy frivolous things or any shiny new object when you really can't afford it, it might be better to have separate accounts so that person can blow their money on whatever they want with their money. And I get that. So that's something to consider. So what's going to end up happening is if you don't have this type of conversation when you get married or decide to merge your finances, which I wouldn't advise until you're married personally, if you don't have a conversation that's very clear and transparent of like, hey, you like buying a lot more stuff than me, and I think you should have your money and I should have mine, and we can each buy the things that we want. You're gonna prevent a lot of future arguments. So you just have to look at yourselves as a couple and individuals and see if that scenario applies to you. Another factor of this, and why I know some of my clients and friends have decided to have separate accounts with their spouses, is if one person has a lot of debt and the other doesn't. Again, totally fair. One person's coming in with a bunch of medical bills or student loans or whatever it may be. So then it can feel kind of uneven and unfair to the other spouse to have to be generating much extra income to put towards that. Again, my viewpoint is it's a team. I'm fine with coming together and figure out how we're going to handle that. Almost in a business sense, like you're acquiring a business that has some debt and you've agreed to assume that debt as well and help pay it down. But that scenario, again, might not be right for everyone. So that's another thing for you to discuss with your spouse. Okay, let's talk about the pros and cons of having separate accounts. So this would be a scenario where both people are working and bringing in income. Usually how I see this done is they have their own accounts where their money gets deposited, and then they usually have like a joint account where things like rent or mortgage or joint groceries or things like that are paid out of, and it's just agreed that each person puts in X amount of money towards those bills. The pros here are kind of what I said. This makes it so that it's up to each individual to spend their money responsibly, and if there is someone who likes to blow their money when they shouldn't, then that's on them. If you don't have money to pay for that shiny new thing because you blew all your money on something else, that's on you and not me as your spouse. Again, that's a benefit of being able to be responsible for your own funds and how they are used. And then, of course, as I said in the last example, if someone has debt, then it's up to them to figure out how they're going to pay down that debt. The cons that I see here is that if one person falls down in some way, then there isn't really a method to help pick them back up. What I've seen, and this might not be the case for everyone who has separate accounts, but if one spouse loses their job, then how are they going to contribute to that joint account and pay the joint bills? And it puts this extra pressure, and it just feels like, of course there's pressure if you lose your job, but it doesn't feel like a team to me of like, hey, I got your back. Like, you're going through a hard time, that sucks. I got your back. Let's get through this together. I had a client who was in her early 60s and she was worried about her retirement. And her husband was all set. He was totally fine for retirement and was just kind of like, yeah, well, I don't know. You got to figure it out. And just was not very helpful, and it blew my mind. I couldn't imagine leaving my husband to like figure out the rest of his life on his own. Or I think at one point, it was before we started doing Profit First, she was having trouble catching up on taxes, and he was just like, okay, it's up to you. Figure it out. Again, if my husband was in distress financially, I would want to do what I could to help him and make sure that he was set up for the rest of his life. So that is my own personal opinion. But to me, marriage is a team, and that's not teamwork. Now, on the flip side, I have another client and they have separate accounts. They file taxes separately due to certain debts and all of that. But she was able to help her spouse when he was behind on taxes. So they both are entrepreneurs, let's say, and he wasn't able to pay his tax bill. And she was like, hey, well, I've been doing Profit First and I have extra money in my tax account. So let's just do it to pay your tax bill. So to me, that's teamwork. That's a situation where you have separate accounts, but you're still showing up for each other and helping when one person falls down. Now, lastly, a scenario I want to give, especially for my business owners out there, because I have some clients where they are the breadwinner of the family. This isn't just business owners. Sometimes people are employees and they're the breadwinner of the family. So they're determining how much money is being brought home. And what I've seen work well there is to give a separate expense account to the stay-at-home parent. This way, the person who is bringing home all of the money can budget, or you budget together. I've seen it done both ways, but budget, hey, as the stay-at-home parent, I'm running around getting groceries and gas and paying for kids' play parties and whatever, haircuts. So I need about X amount of dollars to spend a month. And what's great is it does give that accountability factor where it's not like one person is working 60 or 80 hours a week to make the money and then one person is blowing it on like Louis Vuitton all the time. These are extreme examples. But this way, they're given almost, I hate to use the word allowance, but they're given their budget, their responsibility of what they can spend for the family in the month, and it's up to them to figure out how they're going to spend it. So I'm just making a random number. If they need $2,500 a month to cover all those things, it's up to them to figure out how to cover them. And then that way, the business owner can just be focused on making the money and generating that income for the family. So I think this is a really good teamwork approach for a scenario where one person is bringing home the goods and one person is taking care of the family and managing the household. This is a great option for you. So you probably already gathered what my decision was when I got married, but basically I sat down with my husband, and at the time we did actually have a joint account where we were paying, I think we were splitting rent, and we would put like restaurant dinner funds in there to split meals. So when we got married, I said, I want to be in charge of our finances. I want to know when your bills are due, how they're getting paid, because he did it all in his head. I do it on spreadsheets, and we both had some debt. And again, I was fine with just combining that and seeing how are we going to tackle this as a team? How are we going to save money for a house as a team? How are we going to afford to have a kid as a team? We just celebrated our 6-year marriage anniversary, and there have been times throughout our relationship or our marriage actually where, Matterhorn was just getting started. I wasn't able to make as much from Matterhorn and he was making more than me. There were times where he was in between jobs and I had to figure out how to make more at Matterhorn to support it. There have been times where we both had to step up and pick up the slack. But to me, again, that's teamwork, and that's just our viewpoint in our marriage. So that doesn't mean that what we do is right for you. I hope that you found some different scenarios in this video so that you can pick what's going to be right for you and your family. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions. And of course, I do have to shout out our channel sponsor, MetaPulse. If you are a business owner, or even if you're trying to put some KPIs to your household, MetaPulse is a great central location to manage all things people, stats, goals, knowledge center for your employees. I highly recommend it. And lastly, if you need help increasing your revenue or increasing your profit, click below to book a free profit assessment with me. I'll see you next time.